What's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life? And more importantly, how did you react to it? Did you push through to the end? Did you succeed triumphantly or at least finish? Or did you give up halfway through just feeling like this is too hard and I can't do it? The answer to that question could determine a lot about your life. Everything from how successful you're going to be to how happy you're going to be. You've probably heard of the marshmallow test. This psychologist put some kids in a room and gave them a marshmallow and said, I'm going to leave the room for a little bit. If you haven't eaten the marshmallow when I'm back, then I'll give you another marshmallow. And the kids who didn't eat the marshmallow were way more successful later in life. They had higher incomes, they had higher life satisfaction scores, everything. Recently, the psychologist Angela Duckworth did some work expanding on that. She created something she called the grit scale, which is this self-evaluation form that basically tells you how gritty you are, right? It asks questions like, when things get tough, do you stick with them? And she found that the people who were grittier, as per the grit scale, were better at pretty much everything. For example, all the Army guys at West Point were racking their brains trying to figure out who would get through the first 5 weeks, which cadets would not quit after they were, being hazed and subject to all kinds of intense trials and tribulations. And nothing that they had ever looked at before worked. If you were smarter, that didn't mean you were more likely to get through. If you were, taller or whatever, that didn't mean you were more likely to get through or stronger physically. But Angela Duckworth's grit scale predicted who would get through the first 5 weeks extremely well. Grit has become a super popular book, mostly because business people and sports coaches and military leaders, et cetera, have kind of known intuitively that grit is important for a very long time. And now scientists have started catching up to that. However, Angela Duckworth's ideas of grit are different from the stereotypical football coach's ideas, where you're supposed to, slog through the mud and practice in super cold weather just to make yourself tougher. Angela Duckworth says that the most important ingredient for grit is really loving and caring about what you do. If you don't have a purpose, if you don't really care about what you're doing, then you're not going to push through adversity, and it's stupid to try and get you to push through adversity. This is why the quote-unquote tiger mom approach to parenting doesn't work as well as it does in theory, right? Because if you tell your 4-year-old, like, you're going to play the piano and you're going to learn to be really, really good at piano and you're going to practice 5 hours a day and you're not going to play any other musical instruments, well, guess what? Maybe that child will grow up to love the piano and really take a passion to it, but you're kind of betting on that. And if they don't have a passion for it, then they're just going to be doing it to please you. And as soon as you stop breathing down their necks, they're going to stop. You can tell that Duckworth doesn't like the tiger mom approach because she takes a different approach with her own kids, right? Her rule in her family is everyone has to do a quote-unquote hard thing. And that can be, playing an instrument, playing a sport, whatever. And the beauty of that rule is the kids get to choose, and so they pick something that they like and that they're passionate about. And they are allowed to quit what they're doing, but they're only allowed to quit at a quote-unquote natural stopping point, right? Like when the season is over or when it's time to, pay the next year's tuition or whatever. And that way, if they don't care about what they're doing anymore, they can switch to something else, but they can't have a bad day and quit because of that, right? Like they can't, lose a match or have a bad day of practice or get angry at their teacher or whatever and be like, no, fuck this, I'm not doing that anymore. One of the reasons why she takes this approach to parenting is because she wants her kids to grow up to be gritty. And the good news is the scientific literature says that grit is, it's partially an inborn trait, but it's also partially based on your experiences and your attitudes. So if you're not a gritty person right now, you can work to become gritty. How do you become gritty? Well, there are two ways. The first way is to build your grit muscles by overcoming adversity. Every time you overcome adversity, your brain neurologically changes a little bit so that it's easier for you to overcome adversity next time. You also prove to yourself that you can overcome adversity, and so the next time you face adversity, you're more motivated to try and get over it. So consider challenging yourself, push yourself just outside your comfort zone at whatever it is you do, and try and get a little bit better at it every day. Another way that you can become gritty is by simply hanging out with gritty people, right? Like there's that old parable about you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And that's really true, right? You'll take after your friends, you'll copy them. So if you see them doing hard things and pushing through adversity, you will want to do the same. Similarly at work, try to join a company that has a culture of doing hard things and pushing through adversity. And on the flip side of that, let's imagine that you're building a team and you want your team to consist of gritty people. Well, there are two things you should do. First of all, you should build a culture of grit and encourage people to push through adversity, reward people for pushing through adversity. Give people a talking to when it looks like they're about to give up out of frustration, and encourage them to keep going for a little bit longer. And second of all, before you hire somebody, or before you bring somebody on the team or give somebody a roster spot or whatever, test them for their grit. Albert Einstein used to have these things called Einstein puzzles, where they were basically really, really difficult problems. Like Barry lives in a White House and has two cats. Sally lives in, she lives next to Bob and has a dog, etc., and she smokes pell-mell cigarettes. And you're supposed to figure out what type of cigarette everybody smokes and what pet they have and where they live and what color their house is, etc. And the point of those problems is to, first of all, test how smart you are, and can you follow the logic and can you figure it out. But second of all, when things get tough, what do? How do you react to that? Kind of like that quote from Rocky, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
So that's it for today's Theo's Book Club. If you're new here, I make short videos breaking down the big ideas in all the books that I read. If you like this video, click thumbs up. That tells YouTube to show it to more people. And since I am a growing channel, I would greatly appreciate that. You can also go and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.